Sometimes made in America means made in China.
Andy, I hear you have a very interesting story about something made in America.
Supposed to be made in America.
Okay.
This is a story you don't usually hear about. Comes around every now and again, and I think it should end up as a Netflix series one day. It should. That's just my opinion. But the story is that sometime last year, an Air Force serviceman noticed a Chinese character on the screen, on the built-in screen of a body cam. Now, the gear that our U.S. military is supposed to use is supposed to be made in America for obvious reasons, security and otherwise. So what they did is they reported the issue, and forensics was able to find 3 images in the firmware of this device. One of the images was the U.S. Air Force image. One of the
the logo for the Air Force.
The logo for the Air Force. The logo for the company that allegedly manufactured the device, and then the logo for the Chinese Public Security Ministry or something. That's what it is.
Oh no.
What's interesting about that though is the 3 images, forensics was able to find that all 3 were written at the same time, and they were all written with a machine that was set to a Chinese time zone. So this strongly indicates both that it was manufactured in China, but also that it was manufactured in China with the intent to be delivered to the United States Air Force. So that's kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. And the obvious question that you should be asking is, how did this happen? Is this an accident? Is this a situation where somebody's going to come up and say, oh, you got the wrong box? Sorry, here's the right one. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So what federal investigators have found was the company that provided those body cams to the United States Air Force, a New York-based company called Aventura, had actually been fraudulently delivering their products, which are marketed as made in America, but were really created in China fraudulently to different U.S. customers, including the United States government, all 3 branches, which is a bummer. Even more crazier than that is they found that this company has been doing this for over a decade, which is kind of crazy. So to add to the boldness of this story, investigators found that the people responsible, the executives for Aventura, went to great lengths to hide the fact that they were actually delivering Chinese-made products and then slapping Made in America stickers on them. So there's email correspondence between Aventura executives and Chinese manufacturing people discussing strategies and methods on how to remove Chinese artifacts from things like the operating system, the firmware, packaging material, and the like. But apparently they weren't very good at it, because in one instance, a sample product was delivered to a prospective client, and the manual inside that came with that was actually in Chinese. So that's kind of a big major slip up there.
Yeah, it's a tell.
Yeah. Kind of a big tell, kind of a big tell, unfortunately. There's more aspects to this. So what's kind of crazy is the owner of the company, the de facto owner of the company, a guy named Jack Cabasso. Last year, he actually sent an email to a government employee citing that 12 of his competitors, of Aventura's competitors, were breaking the Trade Agreements Act, which is the law that prevents U.S. companies or U.S. federal agencies from using devices manufactured in different countries, like China. Mm-hmm. He actually alleged that his competition was actually doing just that, and he expressed concern that there were major security concerns for the U.S. government using products that were manufactured in China, something that his company was allegedly doing at the time. So that's pretty bold. That's a pretty bold thing to do. But of course, they were caught. 6 executives for the company Aventura were actually arrested on these charges. The charges go even further. There was some money laundering involved. So there was money that was going through different shell companies that the Jack Cabasso and his wife were using that would in turn come back to them financially. There was a whole line about a yacht that was technically owned by the company that would be rented out, and the proceeds would go directly to their personal accounts. The shell companies were used to purchase houses for relatives of at least the Jack Cabasso and his wife, which is kind of nuts. But they're caught, which is great. But I think this speaks to a larger issue, and the larger issue here is supply chain security. Yep. because in this case, it happened, and it was caught because someone just by chance noticed a little icon, a little Chinese icon or letter or whatever it was on a screen. How do you prevent it from even getting there? Because at that point, you've already failed from a supply chain security perspective. Mm-hmm. So what do you do to prevent getting there entirely is the larger concern.
Security is everyone's responsibility, and even someone who's not directly responsible for security can have an impact on it. So if you have a question about something like that, or you have a concern and you have a way of reporting it, that means that in general, we can find these kind of problems faster. So if you don't have a good reporting chain for people who are just lay folks who aren't security responsible, if you don't give them a way to report problems like that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Give them a contact where they can at least ask questions.
I think for vendor security, one of the things to consider sometimes is with the smaller companies, just vetting them out to make sure they can actually deliver on the promises that they're kind of stating that they can deliver on. Because usually with these things, there's probably a couple of different people bidding for contracts to deliver cameras or whatever it might be, some product. And just making sure that that contractor has the actual capacity to deliver that they're not coming in way below the bid, and because that might be a signal that something might be wrong.
Yeah. That
they're undercutting the competition so much that it's just impractical. That what are they doing? What secret have they discovered that the other manufacturers have not? And of course, visiting the actual headquarters or the actual manufacturing facilities, sometimes if it's practical for a large contract, I think is important. So you could see that, hey, they're really doing this and they're really doing it here.
I did want to point out that it's unclear what the standard procedures are for vetting a security or a vendor. The article doesn't go into exactly what the government does to make sure that they can actually deliver the products that they're offering. But the article does go into the company Aventura was actually, someone had actually contacted them and asked them for proof and verification that your products are actually made in America. And one of the things that the de facto owner provided was a photo of Aventura's manufacturing plant in Long Island, New York, where the company is based. And in fact, the photo actually came from an article 4 years prior of a manufacturing plant that was actually in China. So, so to your point, Stan, it needs to be more than just, can you send me something to verify? You called it. It needs to be a site visit. You need to evaluate volumes and kind of go a little deeper. Supply chain security is as important as it's ever been. So it's very important that you vet the vendors that you're going with, and if they say it's American made, verify that they're actually doing what they say they're doing. So it's the old adage, the trust but verify, I think it applies here.